Welcome everyone to Prosecutors Center for Excellence's webinar on improving recruitment and retention. My name is Christine Hammond. I'm the Executive Director of Prosecutors Center for Excellence. We are so lucky to have a number of wonderful presenters that are going to be discussing the many aspects of this issue that is a problem and a concern for prosecutors all around the country. Turning it over to Kimberly Spahos, who is the Chief Resource Prosecutor for the North Carolina Conference of District Attorneys. So thank you so much for joining us, Kimberly. Again, please look at her bio in our booklet. Kimberly, could you give us an overview of this issue and how the new attorneys that are coming out of law schools are impacted by the various issues that you're going to be discussing?
Absolutely. And it's really an honor for me, Chris, to talk about this topic. It could not be more important or more timely than it is right now. And so I'm really impressed that we are discussing this on a national level. I want to start by saying, oftentimes, while we believe prosecutors are special, and we are special in a lot of ways, this recruitment and retention phenomenon right now is really impacting the entire workforce. 36% of HR professionals say that recruitment is their top challenge. And that's across the board for everyone coming into the workplace. And so when we're talking about working in the criminal justice system and specifically working as prosecutors, I think it's so important for us to understand what law students are focusing on right now. The people that are coming into our profession, what's important to them? What are they looking for? What is their focus? And when we think about that, we cannot deny the impact nationwide that social justice reform and the social justice movement has had on recruitment and on the mindset of law students. And we also can't discount the impact that COVID and the pandemic has had on both recruitment and retention. What the statistics show us is that 35% of employees across the board are going to leave their job in 2023. And really, as I mentioned, this is recruitment and retention is at the very top of every human resource professional's list of things that they need to focus on. Just to share a few statistics with you that are North Carolina specific. For us, our prosecutor applicants are down 31%, and it's even higher than 31% in our rural districts across the state. And it's not just prosecutors, it's also the administrative staff, the legal assistants, the victim advocates, and the investigators that are working in our offices. And for us in North Carolina, we have a 38% decrease in those applicants from just 3 years ago. And that really is higher in urban districts. So that was an interesting thing for me to look at, that in rural districts in our state, we have a higher percentage of applicants that are down for prosecutors, but in urban districts, the higher percentage is in the administrative professionals. And from a retention standpoint, since we're looking at both recruitment and retention, just again, for another example in North Carolina, our turnover rate is up 29% for our administrative professionals, and it's up 37% for our prosecutors. And the retention percentages are much higher in urban areas than they are in rural areas. So when we look at that, we need to think about, why is this happening? And why is it happening at such a high percentage in prosecutor offices? So I want to go back a little bit now to talking about recruitment and talking about what it is that law students, people that are coming into the field, those new lawyers that we'd be recruiting for new positions in prosecutor offices across our country, what is it that they're looking for? What is it that they want? And so I want to overarch everything you hear today with you thinking about this recruitment process the same way we think about jury selection. And what I mean by that is we're not the only ones doing the picking. Just like when we are in jury selection, we're not just the ones trying to choose the jurors that are best suited for this case. We know that they're making assessments about us every step of the way during that jury selection process. The same thing is happening in your recruitment process. And so we're not at the place anymore that we have a huge list of resumes of people waiting to come into the DA's offices. And we have to realize that in addition to us trying to find the right fit for our offices, these incoming new lawyers, they're really looking for the right fit too. And so we have to come at this process differently than we have in the past. What we know is that student loan debt is higher than ever. We know that people are coming into this field of work with debt over $130,000, $140,000, $150,000. And so for recruitment, money and salary has always been interesting and been a top priority, but it's taking a back seat now to people coming into the workforce to how does the organization reflect their value system? And we need to understand that. People who are coming into the workforce in general, and specifically those that are coming into prosecutors' offices, are looking to find a space where what's important to them, the values that they exhibit in their personal and professional life, they want to see those values in the professional offices that they go to work in. We know that that's a little different than in the past. But what is not different is from a retention standpoint. While people may be enticed to go to a job for salary, that is absolutely not why they stay in positions. And so we need to remember that as leaders in our offices, that organizational culture is so important. Over the last 6 weeks, I have had meetings with the Career Development and Services Department at every law school that is in North Carolina. And what I have heard repeatedly is that the incoming surveys that they're doing of students that are coming into law school, the primary focus of those that are interested in criminal law say that the top thing that they're interested in is criminal justice, social justice reform. And so it's really important that as prosecutors, we show those new potential lawyers and those new potential prosecutors how they can have a greater impact in our offices than they can anywhere else. We need to make sure that they understand that coming into a prosecutor's office is where you have the most discretion to make the most impact in your community and the most impact in the criminal justice system. So while I've given you a broad brush stroke of some of the issues that are out there right now, I'd like to end my time before we move on to the next speaker with giving you just a few ideas of some of the ways that you can look at the issues that I have just mentioned and how do you incorporate and implement into your recruitment process and your retention strategies, techniques that will help you build and continue to build strong offices, but also keep those folks in place. First, it's really important that you create an exceptional onboarding experience. All of the research shows that that onboarding experience should be more than just what might have been familiar to many of you who have been in this work for a long time, where you kind of come in and you get a docket and somebody says, here's your courtroom, go have at it. Our work and our process of bringing people on board in our office, we just can't skip on the first steps. We just can't skimp on the first steps. And we have to focus more on the organizational culture of our office than the logistics. And so really, folks need to see and realize very early on how they can connect internally with the teams in our office, but also with the things that are most important to them. They need to see very quickly how your organization is going to reflect the values of the community. It's also really critical that you connect people early on with mentors in your office, because this onboarding process is your first opportunity to connect and it's your first opportunity to integrate. Next, you've got to build team engagement, not just assume that it's there. And in fact, even if you have historically had in your office a strong mentor program, or you've historically had what you thought was, really strong team engagement, with the backlog issues that we're facing now and the current decrease in staff and open positions, our employees, our team members are feeling more pressure than ever. And when they're feeling more pressure than ever with the substantive work that they have to do, they are spending less time on engaging with each other and less time on engaging and mentoring new members of your team. And so only 21% of employees across the board right now say that they are truly engaged. And you want people to be engaged. You want to build that team engagement, because when you do that, your folks say, my work group has a strong sense of team spirit. People are proud to tell others that they work for your organization when they feel engaged with the organization, and they're more committed to your office's success. When people feel a strong sense of team engagement, they say that they would work harder for longer hours if it demands it, but they also feel personally effective at their job. And so that needs to be a real focus of the work that you're doing in order to both recruit and retain. Next, you have to provide professional development. The folks that are coming into the workforce now want to grow. They want to grow individually and they want to grow in their own profession. And so it's important that you have a plan that you share in your job postings. If you are using the same job posting for open prosecutor positions that you used 5 years ago, that's your first problem. You really need to jazz up that job description. People need to know that they're coming into an environment where they're going to have professional support. People also need to know most of your offices, I'm sure, provide free or very, very low cost legal education where they can get their required hours for what your state bar or state bar associations require. You need to promote that. You need to let people know in the job descriptions that they're coming into an office that focuses on well-being and wellness, but also focuses on team spirit and from a value structure. And so you really need to think about, what does that job posting look like to link people in? And then once they get into your office, they need to know they're going to have the opportunity to develop professionally, to learn and to grow. Next, you've got to concentrate on an organizational culture. Now, I know that most of people might be sitting out there going, we're just trying to figure out how we can get our cases on the calendar to a jury and disposed. We've got more cases than we've ever had, and the pandemic has put us in a bad space. But if you don't focus on creating and promoting that organizational culture, you're going to lose new employees, and you're going to lose those that have been on your team. So spend some time with your team defining what your organizational values are, and make your office one that focuses on relationships. When we invest in people, everything else works itself out. So you want to create that spirit of community in your office that people feel from the very first call they get for an interview, because nearly half of employees in any profession would leave their current job for a lower paying job with an organization that has a better culture. And so that's really important for you to focus on your organizational culture and make sure people know about it. And then you have to have a team that encourages, gives feedback, gives acknowledgement, and gives recognition. And I don't mean here just the blanket thank you. I mean, you need to tie together people's workspace and their work performance with specific pieces of advice, feedback, and engagement. You want to implement meaningful personal recognition, and you want to not just celebrate victories. As prosecutors, we've been pretty good at learning how to celebrate the victory at trial, the guilty verdict for someone that really creates a public safety threat. But we also need to remember to celebrate people's values, uncompromising integrity, a spirit of teamwork. You want to celebrate those things as well. And then last, but certainly not least, you want to focus on work-life blend. We talk a lot about balance, and I'm not a fan of discussing work-life balance, because when you use the word balance, it inherently means that anything can throw you off your balance. And so you want to know that and understand it. But you also want people to get that right blend. When something's blended well, it's hard to separate it out. Once you put all those ingredients into a cake, you can't separate the flour back out from the eggs. And so you want people's work and the blend of their work and their life to really put them in a place that they're not experiencing quick burnout. And so those would just be a few tips for you to model and for you to think about as you reach a very different population of people coming into the workforce, and also a changed population that have been doing this work for a long time.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. As you can tell, we covered a lot there, and that was a wonderful overview. And we will now turn to Sheila Polk, who is the county attorney of Yavapai County in Arizona, who is going to talk about one aspect of what you were saying, Kimberly, about, and it goes probably, and I'll let her speak to it, to the notion of blend, of how do you blend that work life combo. So I'd like to turn it over to Sheila Polk. Again, I encourage you to read the bio to learn more about her very extraordinary background.
Thank you, Christine, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I am Sheila Polk. I'm the elected lead of the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. We are one of 15 counties here in Arizona. Our population is about 250,000 people, and my office has 112 employees. So going back to March of 2020, when COVID hit, I was able to get a state recovery fund grant and purchase for every single employee remote virtual desks. This allowed me to send everybody home. And so everybody began working remotely on a temporary basis back in March of 2020. We had to make a few exceptions, of course. A few folks came into the office to make sure that paper was moving, but for the most part, everybody was working at home. When we started coming out of COVID, and I realized we're not out of COVID yet, but as offices began reopening, I held a series of small group meetings with our employees, asking them what they thought the future should look like. And what I heard loud and clear from everybody was they really wanted the remote option to be made permanent. So that is what we did. Officially, as of July 1 of 2021, I now have a permanent remote work option in place for all of the employees. Just as of last week, of 112 employees, 37% of let me back up. So we have three options. You can choose to work in the office 100%. You can choose to be at what we call a hybrid employee. So you work in the office 3 days or more, and you can work 2 at a remote work site, or you can be 100% remote. And the significance, the difference between being remote and being office or hybrid is remote workers do not have a designated workplace at the county attorney's office. The other two groups do. I let everybody choose, and they can move kind of in and out of these three categories, obviously with adequate notice because we have to make some internal changes. But as of last week, we have 17% of the employees who have chosen to work 100% in the office, 35% who have chosen to work 100% remotely, and then 48% who are hybrid. For the attorneys, I've got 41 attorneys, 6 work in the office full-time, 15 are hybrid, and then another 20 have chosen to work remotely 100% of the time. A few things to make it work. First of all, my office, we transitioned to electronic cases back in 2016. We have a database, an office software system called Prosecutor by Carpel. That has made it possible to do what we're doing. The second thing is we have Microsoft, the Outlook suite. We have Microsoft Teams. I worked with our judges back when everybody was really working remotely. Our judges, they were able to adapt to Microsoft Teams appearances. So to this day, we still do a lot of virtual appearances for our cases, for both our civil and our criminal cases. Those two things have made it possible for us to continue on a permanent basis with this remote work status. I truly believe that this is a very, very significant recruitment and retention tool. I am at almost 100% in terms of filled positions. I say almost because couple of weeks ago, we actually let go one employee from our victim services division. Had nothing to do with the remote work option. It was a performance issue. But I only have one vacancy right now. All my attorney positions are filled. All of our litigation specialists, all of our other victim advocates, we are filled. And in fact, last fall, my board of supervisors awarded my office with 3 additional prosecutors and 1 additional litigation specialist. So we have been able to fill all of those positions. Of our positions, we have 8 people who do not even live in Yavapai County. So they are residing in another location in the state of Arizona. By law, attorneys have to live in the state of Arizona. So 7 of the 41 attorneys do not reside in Yavapai County. Now, all of the employees who elect to work remotely, they have to agree to a number of things. I have them sign essentially, it's a memorandum of understanding. They acknowledge that working remotely is a privilege, not a right, that it can be revoked at any time. They acknowledge that this ability to work remotely is not a substitute for daycare or family care. And everybody who is new to the office does start in the office. And so every new employee will spend time in the office until such time as that new employee and his or her supervisor feel that they are ready to, if the employee wants to transition to a hybrid or a remote, then it's really by agreement of those 2 individuals. So yes, I think it is a very, very significant recruitment and retention tool. I'm hearing from my folks that they appreciate this opportunity, the flexibility that the remote work environment provides them. How do I ensure that the work of the office is getting done? Well, through Prosecutor by Carpel, we can see who is doing what. And so the acronym for Prosecutor by Carpel is PBK. We can run any number of reports. I personally can actually get on anybody, any of my employees. I can get on PBK. I can look at their to-do list. It's called the view. And so we can check up, we run reports. But frankly, if somebody isn't getting the job done, we're going to hear from other people as well. So I'm going to hear from the judges. I'm going to hear from our police officers. I'm going to hear from victims in the community. And we have had no drop off in productivity. When we first implemented the remote work option, I met with everyone in the office. They wanted it to happen. And so I really pushed back on them to say, then you show me the way. You show me how this can work. I trust all of you, and you are the ones to make it work. And so I really feel the office wants it. I know they love it. I did a survey not too long ago, got lots of positive feedback. They want that option to continue. So what changes have I made to make sure the distribution of work is fair and that remote employees understand what is expected of them? We really didn't make too many changes. We do have, for our litigation specialists, we do have a requirement that even if they are remote, they have to work 1 day in the office each week. And that's because of PBK and our electronic case filing system. We start with taking paper and we put it into the system. So every piece of paper that comes in the door has to be scanned in. And so the supervisors for all of our different divisions, they will decide among themselves. They create that schedule for a litigation specialist to what day of the week he or she is going to work in the office. And we've been able, really, I've relied heavily on supervisors to monitor workloads to make sure that workloads remain fair, whether you are remote, hybrid, or if you are in the office 100%. Early on, the issue we did have was that folks who had chosen to be in the office, walk-in traffic was falling on them, calls, etc. So we addressed that, and we worked out a system to make sure that the people who are choosing to work in the office are not carrying an undue or an unfair burden. And then we did make some changes internally to the physical environment to support this remote work option. As I said earlier, employees who have chosen the remote option do not have a designated work spot, but we created what we call hot desks and hot offices. And we have a calendar system. So if an attorney who is working remotely is going to be in trial, wants to have an office to work out of for a few days, he or she can get on the calendar, reserve one of the hot offices. We repurposed a lot of the space that used to be dedicated workspace for the employees who are now remote. And so we created more conference rooms. What we found is for the folks who are working remotely, obviously they still need a place for meetings. They need to meet with police officers and witnesses and victims. And so we repurposed some of the offices into small conference rooms. And then one of the favorite things we did is we created what we call the lounge. And so we opened up a pretty large area in our office. We took out the cubicles, we took out the desks. It is an area for everyone to use however they want. We furnished it from Facebook Marketplace with very few dollars, but we have nice arrangements of chairs. We have a table, a coffee table. And the goal is you might just want to feel more social. So you might be a remote worker, but you want to come in for the day, but you don't want to go into an office. And so the goal is to allow those individuals, bring your laptop because everything is on your laptop. Just come and hang out in the lounge. We also hold a lot of meetings in the lounge now. My goal is to create a more open environment. And unless a meeting has to be behind closed doors, most of our meetings are now taking place in that lounge area. So, the last thing I will say, circling back to Kimberly's point about office values, and one of the challenges is when I don't see my employees as often as I used to, how do I still create that sense of community? How do I let them know that I care? And how do I share my office values with them? So we implemented for all of the new employees a new employee orientation. They have 2 months to complete a list of about 16 different items. Most of them are to conduct 20-minute interviews of other positions within the office. It's a way for them to get to know one another. But on every single new employee orientation, they have to interview the county attorney to learn about my shared office values. And then the second thing I started is I personally now do our in-office trainings. So twice a month, we do top quality office trainings. A group of my employees will be required to come personally for that training, and then the rest can be there virtually. But I will introduce our trainer. I stay for the training. We do other announcements at the same time. But that's another way for me to stay connected, for my employees to stay connected with each other, and really to address probably one of the biggest issues that you're all thinking with the remote work option is, how do we do that spontaneous collaboration? And how do we make sure that we build positive relationships among our employees?
Well, thank you, Sheila. You have encapsulated in a short period of time a lot of work and thinking that's gone into a whole new approach to prosecution. I'm now going to turn it over to Sophia for 10 minutes to ask you and Kimberly the questions that we are getting through our chat. So I'll turn it over to them.
And Kimberly, starting with you, some of the viewers would like to know if you have suggestions for keeping the recognition from getting stale. So can you provide a few examples of recognition that you've seen that kind of keeps it moving along?
Sure, absolutely. First, I would remind us that, we're all lawyers, so words are important, and we need to think about how we title any formal recognitions. And so I have worked really hard to eliminate the word employee from my vocabulary. And we talk about having teams and people being on our teams. And that word just means something very different than employee. A person on my team just last week said, I really love working for you. And I said, you don't work for me. You work with me and we work together. And so I think it's really important for us to think about that. And so get creative with the titles that you have for any kind of standardized or regular recognitions. So instead of it being an employee of the month, it can be the team member above and beyond award. That kind of opens up the thought of what you're asking people to nominate folks for. When I think of Employee of the Month, I think that that's been a title that's been out there for a long time. I think maybe it means that it has to be the top employee in the whole organization for that month. But when I hear the Above and Beyond Award, what that says to me is that this is somebody that's done something a little extra during whatever time period we're talking about. The other thing that I think is so important is you want to tie any recognitions to specific incidents or specific achievements. That's what makes it meaningful for the person that is receiving the award. And it also shows that you've taken the time to really think about that acknowledgement. And then last, I would tell you that things don't have to be so formal. I do a lot of training about leadership and how important leadership is. And one of the things that somebody suggested to me they had done that's on a very low budget is they created in their office a Post-it wall. And what they do is they encourage people to take Post-it notes and just write positive things or accolades, attaboys or attagirls for folks that are in their office. And then they just put them up. And then it creates a spirit among your office where you're in a constant state of recognition, encouragement, and feedback.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Sheila, we've got some questions for you as well. With regard to differences between those that are working remotely and those who are in person, have you noticed any difference in trial work?
We have not noticed any difference. Obviously, all employees do have to come to the office if a supervisor wants them in the office that day for a meeting, or if I'm requiring them to come in for training. And I will see spontaneous meetings of folks who are in trial in that lounge area as they're still brainstorming. We have this office, the Microsoft Teams, which still allows everyone to put eyes on each other. The only difference is it's not in person. It's doing very much what we're all doing right now. And what we are finding is that our folks are using that Teams video option frequently. And they're doing it very much as they used to spontaneously run into each other in the hallway and start chatting. So our folks have smaller groups that they have formed on the teams. And, they can call up each other anytime. By the way, anytime I want, I can just call via video one of my employees and I can see right then and there where they are or if they're not at their desk. But I'm not seeing any difference in trial work. We tried a record number of trials, by the way, in 2021, as we are playing catch up with the COVID backlog, and everyone's still doing really well.
With regard to the volume of electronic communication, have you noticed that that's more difficult to manage now that you have more remote workers? In other words, emails, Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, things of that nature.
I personally have noticed that, and I think that's probably what this question is referring to, but I carry my smartphone and I've got texts coming at me. I've got the messaging app on Teams coming at me. We have the emails, we have the phone calls, and we have the video phone calls. So yes, the volume of electronic communications has definitely increased. And what I have reminded my folks, particularly the supervisors, you have to be checking all of those. If you've got somebody, we are trying to get our folks to use Teams to message each other rather than sending text on cell phones. And so, but yes, the volume has certainly increased, and just, having as a process in the office, trying to get everybody to use the same mechanisms to communicate has been a bit of a challenge.
And with regard to the supervision, you had mentioned that you kind of put it back on your supervisors. Have you had any feedback from them about whether it's more difficult or easier or the same to manage the employees?
My supervisors love the remote option. Many of them are remote themselves. Okay. And so when issues have come up, they very eagerly figure out how to get them solved. They are huge proponents of Teams and spontaneous Teams meetings, when they can do it. or having folks come in primarily to our lounge area to do in-person meetings. But I feel, my employees are the ones who want this. Let me correct myself. My team members are the ones who want this. And they truly are making it happen. And I learned early on, I don't have to have the answer. I don't have to be the problem solver here. If the folks want it, let's develop it together and let's make it work together.
And one last question for you, Sheila, with regard to some of the more logistical issues, you mentioned that you had a grant which provided everybody with a laptop. What about cell phones or other equipment that might be needed at home? How much does your office supply, or what do you recommend that people supply in order to facilitate a robust home office environment?
We supplied everybody with laptops, with a monitor, and then with the docking station. We did not supply folks at home with printers. If they want to print, they can come into the office, but we are really discouraging being a paper office anyway. And then all employees that are not classified, in other words, not hourly, they already have the option to have a cell phone at the county expense, or if somebody wants just to have one cell phone, and then we give them a monthly stipend. Okay. So it allows them, it's the same. We didn't have to change anything with respect to our cell phones.
And Kimberly, one last question for you as well, just briefly, are there any mentorship activities that you've seen that are particularly helpful for developing that type of relationship?
I'm getting ready to offer something else that is outside the box a little bit, but I want to remind everybody that we can't grow if we don't change. And so I encourage you to think through this. One of the things that I've seen that's been really successful is early on, if you will partner up a newer prosecutor with someone on a pretty serious trial, it will link them in very quickly to your team. It will link them into the work that we do, and it will give them a broader understanding of victims and that focus part of our team. And it will also give them a broader perspective on the heavier work that we do. And so when I have seen offices that will do that early on, of course, you have to, partner them up with somebody experienced, but go ahead and give them the opportunity pretty early on to get involved in a high impact trial and a high impact case, and something that's complex and has great impact. That really tends to bring people forward and allow them to link in with the more experienced folks on your teams.
Thank you so much. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, and we still have many other questions, but you've certainly touched on so many important topics.